the kind introduction and the invitation to be with you all today. I am going to talk about what the International Fire Sprinkler Association has been doing in the last few years around the world. So giving you just a little bit more perspective as to, in addition to what's going on here in Brazil, what have we been working on? So just to start, and I know Nick mentioned it this morning, and Russ talked about the IFSA a little bit as well, but just to give you the official statement of who IFSA is, it was created in 1999 to promote and enhance the business of manufacturing and installing fire sprinkler, water spray, and water mist systems and devices in all buildings. So a very wide spread of water-based fire protection is really the focus of IFSA. So looking from that perspective, the organization has really worked with so many other local groups in order to further that mission and expand any opportunities that have been brought across. So I did this on a country kind of basis to talk about. So we'll start in the UK, and there are actually 3 different associations that work with fire sprinklers. So you start with the National Fire Sprinkler Network, and in conjunction with IFSA, they've assisted to lower some thresholds. So working with the legislative aspects, and a lot of these projects that you're going to hear about from my presentation today are actually subjects that have been brought up in the other panels today as well. So lowering the thresholds to get more sprinklers installed in retail and school type occupancies, meaning what square footage is a building allowed to be before we implement fire sprinklers. With the Fire Sprinkler Association, they've done all sorts of burn demonstrations, and I know other groups as well have been doing those types of demonstrations, not only to help building owners understand what fire sprinklers can do for their properties, but also to help the general public understand how beneficial they are in saving lives and all of their personal possessions. The British Automatic Fire Sprinkler Association, they did a project to document, with IFSA's help, they were documenting the cost benefit for a high-rise retrofit project they had done, which is really a fascinating project. They took a handful of smaller high-rise buildings and actually retrofit fire sprinklers while the buildings were occupied. So it wasn't just a matter of retrofitting the building when it was empty, but showing that it could be done, and it really did not implement huge amounts of cost over installing a system at some other point. So some of the documentation that came from that, they produced reports and videos, and a lot of that information is available from the IFSA website, so something to look at if you haven't seen it already. In Sweden, there's an organization called Sprinkler Främjandet, which is the only time I'm going to pronounce that because I'm sure I don't do it justice. But they've done a lot of different studies on their buildings as well, and a feasibility study looking at houseboats and some wood frame housing, which is really common in those areas. They also documented some wooden street front project, which really was a historical project, and how do we really preserve the heritage and the culture of these buildings that have been here so long to make sure that they don't have damage and that they minimize any potential risk from a fire incident. The last item to highlight there is actually support to study for some of the building code incentives, and specifically there's an ongoing project right now, so I can't tell you how it turns out yet, but they are studying the public water supplies through the Swedish laboratory there to really see the feasibility of increasing residential sprinklers and the impact that it will have on their water supply. In continental Europe, there is an organization called the European Fire Sprinkler Network that many of you may already be familiar with. They've been around since 2002. And they do a lot of legislative work as well as just campaigning for greater use and involvement in research and technical committees across Europe. So the organization is currently run by Alan Brinson with the help of many members, volunteers, and other people that he works with over there. They've done a lot of conferences and meetings, and the technical committees I know are highly regarded for participation as well. In addition to the European Fire Sprinkler Network, which was formed in a reasonable short period of time there, since IFSA had only been around since 1999, so only a few years later, they were able to pull this group together. They also have country managers that IFSA helps to support, currently in Germany, France, and the Netherlands. So they help to just get a little bit more localized. So same thing as here in Brazil with the formation of ABSPK, in that they were able to localize their efforts and really get to more legislators and more people. Now, a lot of the IFSA support is financial support, but there's also a great support of resources, so such as support in conferences and materials. The basic concept is that fire is going to burn the same no matter where we put it, so why should we start from scratch and just share our information and move forward that way? In Brazil, the IFSA did help to get ABSPK underway, and as well as do some training with the fire department, which is actually the photograph that you see here. We had done a couple of weeks of training with the Sao Paulo Fire Department just about all of the basic information of fire sprinkler systems, and some of the things to look for in installations as well as inspections. They also helped to sponsor the conference a couple of years ago, as well as the conference that we're at today, so also with some support from the IFSA. In Mexico, and Carlos, I'll try not to steal your thunder too much, since I know that's what you're going to be talking about today, but one of the big projects that the IFSA helped with was to form a program called CETRASE, which is a certification program in order to confirm that the people who are planning and designing a fire sprinkler system are actually qualified to do so. In the US, we have a program that we refer to as NICET, which is the same type of program, and it just basically asks a multitude of questions to ensure a basic level of quality across the designers. It is a program that is developed in Spanish, and they are increasing their availability to other Spanish-speaking countries as the next step. So again, just kind of why should the next one start from scratch? And the certification program already exists. So that's one of the main highlights that IFSA worked in conjunction with AMROSI in order to set up. In Colombia, you have ANROSI, so I have to make sure I enunciate correctly, so we're on the next organization. Matching funds to support their beginnings, as well as the IFSA held their conference earlier this year in Colombia. We were in Medellin, and it was a great conference, and I think Alex is in the room somewhere. I lost where he was. There he is. So Alex was actually at the podium in this photograph. We had a great couple of day conference, and great support and enthusiasm from Colombia as well, that they're really energetic right now in order to continue their efforts and get into the legislative and training arenas to make sure that fire sprinklers are continued and at a certain quality level. I saw all the cameras, so I'll hang for a second. I can send you all the picture later, honest. So training seminars are one of the big things that IFSA has done. Now, that doesn't always mean that IFSA is coming and doing the training. Sometimes we work with NFSA. We have also worked with groups in order to get trainers in their own backyard. ABSPK being one of those that now does training with some support from the NFSA programs. So this particular one was actually taken in Mexico a few years back, but we've done IFSA training programs around the world. Again, just the fire is the same, the sprinklers work the same way. So talking about what pieces are needed, where are the pieces you really have to pay attention to, what are the most important components, and of course always talking about inspection, testing, and maintenance. The international conferences. So IFSA has done some conferences where they really are just their own, and then other conferences that have been turned over to other organizations that they help to support. So the list is there. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you can see that EFSN, the European group, has taken over some of those conferences, although IFSA still remains a little bit involved. And I should include in that the 2016 Munich, the last one on there, was also an EFSN conference that I missed flagging in the slide. So there's been quite a few conferences, roughly an every other year pattern, to just help encourage, educate, and promote fire sprinklers in general. So I am figured that I would give the brief synopsis and donate a few minutes back today. But I would be happy to answer questions when we get to that portion later on. So it's a quick overview of what we've done. I know Nick threw up our website earlier, and I apologize I didn't throw it on the slide, but firesprinkler.global is our website. So if you're looking for further information on IFSA as well, that's always there and available for you.